Arizona Cardinals head coach Jonathan Gannon and GM Monti Ossenfort are set to talk to the media at the Combine later today. How can they win their pressers? Let's discuss.
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily Arizona Cardinals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Alex Clancy here. Follow me on Twitter at Clancy's Corner. Follow the podcast at Locked On AZ Cards. Thank you for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen, free wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Follow me on Twitter at Clancy's Corner. Even though I still can't access my Twitter account, follow the podcast at Locked On AZ Cards. I will be using that as my, Twitter purgatory continues. But yeah, there's so much to discuss today. First off, this episode of Locked On Cardinals is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. And right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to get started. I had two options today. I had many options today, but two options today regarding when to record. So normally I like to put it out a little bit earlier in the morning, by lunch at the latest. And Monti Ossenfort and Jonathan Gannon are set to talk to the media at 11:30 and 1:30, I believe, local time, respectively. And I was like, well, I could wait and do reactionary, or I could do it in the morning, kind of say, hey, this is how they can win their presser. This is how they can represent the Arizona Cardinals at the Combine during a year where big moves are going to be made, and where a shift back to relevancy will hopefully happen, playoff push, something like that this year instead of looking towards 2025. And I opted for the latter. So, I'll react to everything they said tomorrow on tomorrow's show. So just, if you watch this after they talked, know that I recorded this before and I did it on purpose. So we can kind of, set the stage for what we're to witness later this afternoon. And there's a couple things that Monti Ossenfort and Jonathan Gannon can do in an effort to position themselves in a position of strength. The fragile ecosystem that still permeates the Arizona Cardinals organization is more real than ever. And it becomes more fragile when actual expectations and actual big moves are made. Sure, last year's draft, big. Trade back up, get your right tackle for the future. Kyler Murray comes back. They have a burst at the end of the season. Nothing was perfect throughout the year, but they showed they showed intestinal fortitude that we didn't necessarily know was going to happen. So last year, it's done, okay? The proof of concept notion, the proof of concept cliche that was spouted from my big dumb face for 17 weeks, and then the preseason, and then even after the fact up until this point is, it's in the past, but it's still fresh enough to where it's like, okay, what was respected of Jonathan Gannon and Monti Ossenfort last year was stability, functionality, cohesion. And this isn't in comparison to what happened before them. I've discussed this every day, as you'll know this, but I think a little refresher once in a while. What was lauded of Monti Ossenfort and Jonathan Gannon and the coordinators, the coaching staff, the team in general, would have been praised of them even if the last regime was all world. So this isn't, Monti Ossenfort and Jonathan Gannon did a better job than Steve Keim and Cliff Kingsbury, so they're getting more credit than they should. No. Irrespective of the Keim era, and irrespective of the dysfunctionality that was, more prevalent than you'd like it to be in any sort of company or organization, Monti Ossenfort and Jonathan Gannon did a very good job last year to right the ship, add stability, but still, in a vacuum, they would have got praise for what they did with the talent that they had. And with Kyler Murray being out for, over half the season. So now the pivot, this is when you can start to get a little more pressure on you. And it's not pressure in the sense that you got to win a Super Bowl next year, but it's like, okay, last year was a wash. Now this year, the expectations of putting out a competent product, a balanced roster, and winning more games than you lose is going to be something that's right away going to be on the table. So the first steps in that is the notorious combine press conference. The GM and the head coach for pretty much every team will speak. A couple teams, Ryan Poles from the Bears and the GM of the Titans spoke earlier today, and then you're going to have Monti Ossenfort, Jonathan Gannon speak at different times later in the day. What are the ways that they can win their presser? And these are little nuanced things, but the only thing you're going to remember that a head coach or GM says is something dumb. The only thing you're going to remember is something out of pocket that you don't necessarily want your head coach or GM to say. So all you have to do is follow the rules with some sort of simplicity, but also you have to follow the rules and execute. So one thing that they have going for them is they're not going to tell everybody that they're drafting Kyler Murray number 1 overall like Steve Keim and Cliff Kingsbury did in 2019. So the ineptitude that they're following is going to make this job a little bit easier. So while you're not going to hear a lot, I would assume, any which way of what they're going to do it for, what they're going to do in free agency, who they're looking at in the draft, it's going to be reactionary. What do you think about Marvin Harrison Jr.? He's good. Malik Neighbors, Roma Dunze, they're good. Offensive linemen, they're good. You're not going to hear a whole lot, but it can be fumbled if something dumb is said. I'm not saying they'll say anything like that, but that's the only thing where you can really flub this. But the way for them to win this combine press conference is number one, first and foremost, how they react to the Arizona Cardinals posting that picture of Kyler Murray and them saying he's the QB1 after the report out that they've done a deep dive on Bo Nix and may draft him at 27. Again, regardless of if that's true or not, where there's actual deep dive being done or if NFL Rumors just posted something fake again, the Arizona Cardinals social media team overcompensated. Now that Josh Rosen, he's our guy, the thing that Cliff Kingsbury said, I think was on local radio, I think it was on 98.7 a handful of years ago in 2018 or 29 going into 2019. Like, it was unnecessary. But how they react to that is going to be important. And I don't think that there's any world in which how Monti Ossenfort has conducted himself and how Jonathan Gannon have conducted themselves is going to crack when they get asked that question. But they're going to get asked that question, probably going to get a follow-up question asked by that, whether it be national media or local media who's going to be there at the Combine in Indy. So that's number one. And then number two, when they get asked questions about specific players in the draft, it's going to need to be a frame of, we've got our plans. Free agency is still going to happen. We've got our plans for the draft, meaning you've got your plan 1, plan 2, plan 3, contingency. You pivot, you listen to trades. Because listen, the Cardinals are going to have to be reactionary instead of proactive here, just like they were with the 3rd overall pick. They don't know what's going to happen in the first 3 picks. So how Monti Ossenfort answers these questions, and it's not pushing questions off. It's not saying, oh, yep, he's a good player, he's a good player, he's a good player. It's not things like that. Even though you're not going to hear much from anybody in this, in any of the pressers, it's how you conduct yourself and how you hold that strong, unified front that people will remember. And this sounds very political, and it kind of is. It's like unified front. Show like you know what you're doing. Show like you're in control, and they seem to be. The only thing people are going to remember are if something is flubbed. Not if somebody gives a boring answer 2 months from now when the draft comes around. Like, it's not, this isn't a make or break by any stretch, but if you say something dumb, it's going to be thrown everywhere. Ryan Poles said something when they asked about the number 1 pick. He goes, I don't have anything to give to you guys. I wish I did. That was the rough quote. So I'll say I'm paraphrasing. It's like, what? What can you do with that? What are you talking about? How do you not know? Like, Steve Wilkes, one of his biggest quotes, and this wasn't during the combine, obviously, but when he was the head coach, it was Friday, and they didn't have their game plan ready for Sunday. And he was asked about it. He goes, yeah, we haven't figured that out yet. It's like, don't do that. That's all the Cardinals can't do. And then also, and this is Jonathan Gannon specific. The third way that they can win is have him be his affable self. Joking with the media, saying funny things, saying quirky things, like being demonstrative. That's who Jonathan Gannon is. And it sounds like too nuanced. It sounds like I'm reaching. I'm not. Like, how much of a gem is Mike McDaniel? Like, he's a goober. He's a genius in football, and he's got a personality. Sue him. Jonathan Gannon's got a personality. You never want that to be lost. You never want him to be buttoned up. It's not like he's, a class clown on the sidelines. He's very, during games, he is stoic at times, which is great. And then during press conferences and interviews, he says some funny things sometimes. Like, you never want that to be lost. You always want your head coach to be whatever leader he's going to be. And with Jonathan Gannon, you get some funny quips and some funny jokes, and I think that's fantastic. I think it's great. So the ways that Monti Ossenfort and Jonathan Gannon collectively can win their pressers, it's going to be happening in about 2 hours for Monti Ossenfort, and then a couple hours after that for Jonathan Gannon, is get the answers about the Kyler Murray questions right. He's our guy. Like, I would be shocked if Jonathan Gannon didn't just laugh it off. But the questions are going to be asked, especially because of the post, because of the Josh Rosen post, whatever it is. It'll be fascinating to see how they answer that and the way they answered those questions. And obviously, both of them love Kyler Murray. That's why they took this job. A large portion of it. Number two, have that unified front, that strong unified front. Like, listen, we know what we're doing. That's what you want Monti Ossenfort and Jonathan Gannon to say in so many words. We got this covered. And that's something that this organization hasn't had. Ever's a long time. But you know that they didn't have it when Steve Keim was out telling people that they were going to draft Kyler Murray at the Combine. Reportedly. Cliff Kingsbury, yeah, we drafted Kyler. Great. Good for you. Way to give up all leverage with the number 1 overall pick. You dingle. And then number 3, just be yourself. And this isn't like it's a huge deal, but it's like these things are little nuanced things, I mentioned again, that will continue to grow and strengthen this unified front that the Cardinals have seemingly built. What is it going to look like? We'll discuss it next. After the actual pressers themselves, I'll hit that. That'll be tomorrow's show, because I'm sure they'll give some great quotes that'll allow me to, expound upon them and make a show out of it. So that'll be fun. You'll have to check in for that tomorrow. Locked On Cardinals, your team every day. Alex Clancy here. Unfortunately, a couple big names have been franchise tagged or have been in talks with their current team about long-term deals that will make the free agent pool a little bit weaker. We'll discuss 2 big names next. Locked On Cardinals, your team every day. This episode of Locked On Cardinals is brought to you by BetterHelp. A lot of us spend our lives wishing we had more time. I work a lot. Okay. I work for 2 companies that I believe deeply in, and it takes up a lot of my day. I mean, I'm working 16-hour days. And the question is, you kind of wish you had more time for other things. Like, what is that? If time was unlimited, how would you use it? And the best way to squeeze that special thing into your schedule is to know what's important to you and make it a priority. For me, it's, to go visit my family more this year. For me, it's to, go out and see my friends more this year instead of focusing so much on work. And if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Learn to make time for what makes you happy with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. And I will reiterate, Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals. I'm recording this podcast before the press conference, before they speak to the media. Both Monti Ossenfort and Jonathan Gannon will speak a little bit later today. I will do a reactionary pod tomorrow. But I felt like setting the stage for what you hope they will say is more fun than just being reactionary afterwards. Follow the podcast at Locked On AZ Cards. Please go to the YouTube channel, search Locked On Arizona Cardinals, hit that subscribe button, man. Let's grow this family of everydayers. Thank you if you've been around forever. If this is also your first listen to Locked On Cardinals, thank you as well. I'm eternally grateful that I've been able to do this since 2017, and then pivoting away from being in sports radio to just focusing on this with my other gig as well. It's been incredible, and it's only going to get better. And step 1 of it's only going to get better starts today. We're getting closer to free agency. We're getting closer to the drafts. We're getting closer to rookie minicamps. We're getting closer to voluntary minicamps. We're getting closer to mandatory minicamps, and then OTAs, and then we'll be off to the races. It's February. Like, August is going to get here real quick. Last offseason was like Death Valley. Last offseason was difficult. Like, listen, I can put out content every day, and I love to. Okay, like this is my lifeblood. This is me getting my fix every day. But we were pulling at some straws. We were pulling at some strings last offseason with so much uncertainty with Kyler Murray out. After Jonathan Gannon and Monti Ossenfort got hired, and they didn't do anything in free agency. It's like, oh boy, what are we looking at here? But now it's just the Cardinals are going to be a hot button topic from now through the offseason. It's going to be fantastic to be a part of. A couple names of big name players that were set to be free agents that were most likely going to be franchise tagged, but obviously would have been good targets for the Arizona Cardinals, have been either tagged or in conversations with their current team to get a deal done. One is Justin Madubuike from the Ravens, defensive lineman. Ozzie Newsome, their GM, was quoted as saying, I think so, when they said that they're going to franchise tag him. So chances are they're going to do that. And this isn't a surprise. I think he's 24 years old. He's not going to garner, $30+ million a year. It's going to be a lot more team friendly, 18 to 20 to 22 a year. He did a very good job last year. He had double-digit sacks. And that's just a machine out there in Baltimore, just breeding defensive players and developing them and turning them into guys like Justin Madubuike, et cetera. Jalen Johnson, top corner. They're in talks to get an extension done there in Chicago, which, isn't a surprise. But there's some other big names out there, like L'Jarius Sneed and Chris Jones. Chris Jones said he's going back to the Chiefs. It's easy to say that right after you win a Super Bowl. We'll see what happens financially. L'Jarius Sneed is going to want to get paid. He'll probably pivot to be the top corner in free agency this year. We'll see what happens. The Chiefs can't pay everybody. And it's going to be interesting to see what the Cardinals do. And it's going to be interesting to see, and I did want to talk about this for an entire segment, but I think taking a couple minutes now will be beneficial. The running back class in free agency is going to have many, many big names. And I'm not saying the Cardinals should pay $10 million a year for running back. That's a disclaimer, okay? So before you jump out of your seats, I'm not saying the Cardinals should pay $10 million a year for running back. I'm not saying they should be $5 million a year for running back. But when the market is so saturated with running backs, bigger name running backs, like Derrick Henry's probably going to go to Baltimore, and Saquon is, potentially linked to Houston, which would make Devin Singletary a free agent, who I mentioned the Cardinals should go out and sign. Austin Eckler, there are guys who are not going to get offered the money that they think they're going to get offered. And with the salary cap skyrocketing, which I'm going to talk about in the final segment, because I didn't mention it yesterday. We had too much to talk about. It's going to be over $250 million, which gives the Cardinals a whole bunch of cheese to be able to spend this offseason. It's going to give other teams more flexibility to sign these running backs. And if the Cardinals can get a 27-year-old running back for a couple years, I feel like it's something that needs to be discussed now, especially because of the absolute, ballooning of the salary cap for 2024. Nobody expects it to be that much. Let's be real. The TV deals are that's insane. That's insane that it's going to be over $250 million. It's insane. So with that, it gives the Cardinals a little bit more wiggle room. So while we look at, it's something that we didn't necessarily see as, here's the thing. The running back room it's finicky. Okay. So you can draft a running back. Blake Corum's not going to be there in the late third round. That's the new hot name that everybody wants to take. He's not going to be he'll go in the second round. They always go a round higher than they're mocked when they've got a big name like that. They just came up a national championship. It's going to be gone. But just look at these names. And I'm not saying that any of these players the Cardinals should give this money to, but Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, Saquon Barkley, Tony Pollard, Austin Eckler, Gus Edwards, Zeke, Devin Singletary's 26, DeAndre Swift is 25, Deontay Foreman had a good last couple years. There are guys, Cam Akers, who's 24, who had a good year and a half in in LA before getting traded. J.K. Dobbins is there. Like, there are guys. A.J. Dillon is there. The Cardinals shouldn't touch him, but like, that's like 10 guys. That's like 10 running backs. And if the Cardinals want to add somebody, and it's not going to break the bank, but breaking the bank now has a different definition because of how big the salary cap bump was. And it's something that the Arizona Cardinals should definitely just look into. They should definitely just look into it. With the $51 million they now have to spend this offseason, it expedites the process a little bit. And I'm excited to do a full segment on this because I wanted to do it on Monday, but we had other stuff to talk about. So let's do it today. Next, Locked On Cardinals, your team every day. This episode of Locked On Cardinals is brought to you by FanDuel. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props. If you want to bet who's going to win the championship, this is one of the wildest years for the NBA. We have no idea who's going to win. Is Boston really going to get over the hump and get past Miami? This is the time of year where Miami's always there. Are you going to take a long shot, take at Miami? FanDuel's got you covered with all of it. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. All right, so this is another wrinkle into the Arizona Cardinals 2.0 saga. Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals. Follow me on Twitter at Clancy's Corner, even though I'm locked out. Follow the podcast at Locked On AZ Cards. Please go to the YouTube channel, search Locked On Arizona Cardinals. Hit that subscribe button. I'm going to have Caroline Fenton from Locked On LSU on Thursday, I believe, to talk to Malik Neighbors, get a little bit more insight into what could be the Arizona Cardinals' 4th overall pick. I mean, this is where you just kind of have to open your eyes and kind of just see all the possibilities. And the Cardinals have 100 damn possibilities with what to do at number 4 overall. So jam-packed rest of the week. There's a question now with the Cardinals having $51 million this offseason. Does that shorten the path towards real relevancy? Because everybody else is going to get that little boost too. So it's not like, the Cardinals are the only ones that are going to have that advantage of the extra 15 or 20 mil to spend. But does that take expectations and heighten them for 2024? Or is it because everybody got it, just contracts are just going to get bigger? Is it like the NBA effect where, remember, Mike Conley was the first one, 3-year, $151 million, I think, or 5-year, $151 million. He was the first one after the salary cap went to the moon where he just got, Mike Conley got that much money. Like, is that where we're at now? Where all the contracts are just going to be bigger? Or is Monti Ossenfort really just going to look at that and be like, okay, you can build and fill all of the holes that the Cardinals have on their roster with that money in 1 year? Like, there's so many different ways you can dissect this. Like, does it expedite the process, gives the Cardinals a little bit more wiggle room to go out and sign free agents? Or is it still status quo? This is going to be the year of relevancy where you win 7 or 8 games, and the year after is when you take it to the moon. I don't know, but that's the question. And that question was not brought to the table until they divulged that it was going to be a whole bunch of cheese extra for the salary cap in 2024. So the one pothole that the Cardinals need to circumvent, that you actually can trust this front office to do with their track record so far, is not just spend the money to spend the money on talent lesser than the money that they're spending on said talent. Don't just give extra money to players just because you can when they don't necessarily deserve it talent-wise. And this is no correlative to paying players more to come play in Arizona. Those days are over, man. Until they're not, those days are over. This isn't a Terrell Suggs situation. This isn't anything like that. And I know that the old dogs and the people have been, old dogs, I say, and listen, I'm 40, so I'm calling myself an old dog too, but the people that have been Cardinals fans, like a lot of everydayers for a long time, understand that, you pay players a little bit more as their retirement fund to go play golf, to make a little bit extra, more money that you get on the open market to be in Arizona. That's not what this is anymore. So that's the cautionary tale. That's the pothole that Monti Ossenfort needs to circumvent, is don't just spend it to spend it. Spend it due to the talent that player brings, unless the market just massively overcorrects for every position just because everybody's going to be making more money. So when you look at $255+ million for the salary cap and the Cardinals having $51 million to spend this offseason with even more next offseason, it begs the question, can you expedite the process for this year? Can the Cardinals be a fringe playoff team this year with one more offseason and one more solid draft, Kyler Murray healthy? Can that happen more so now than before when they had $15 less million to spend this offseason? And the final question, this is why, you have people smart in the front office. Is it better to have more restraint this offseason while everybody else overspends in an effort to position themselves even better for the next year? That's the third option, where it's like, if the free agent pool isn't what you want it to be, because, a bunch of guys are going to get re-signed, Justin Madubuike and Jalen Johnson, two guys that, you thought were going to get either tagged or re-signed by the respective teams and not hit free agency. But if the talent starts to dwindle, do you look towards next year and be like, okay, all of these guys are going to be free agents. You can save your cheese. You can spend most of your money this year, do some extensions in-house, keep it tight here for the foundation of this team, and then look to next year when you can really pounce on free agents for next year. Is the restraint the best option? Number one, do you streamline the process? Do you shorten the curve and just go out and spend and try and make a playoff push this year? Is it going to be null and void because everybody else is going to get the money also? Or do you hold restraint and just say, you know what, next year was the plan to really hit that home run swing on free agents. That's still the plan. You'll sign maybe a couple more free agents this offseason and really go for the gold next year. We'll see. It's going to be fascinating regardless, and it's a nice little sugar coating for this year that we didn't necessarily think was going to happen with the salary cap being as high as it's going to be. Monti Ossenfort and Jonathan Gannon are set to speak late morning and early afternoon today. I'm recording this podcast again before, so I can give this is what should happen during the pressers, and we'll do our reaction podcast tomorrow. I'm excited for that. Locked on Cardinals, your team every day. Remember, without you, there is no me. Keep that in mind always. I will talk to you tomorrow.